I just realized I'm really behind on The Flash. I'm behind by 2 episodes, but that'll be remedied by this video. This video, as you could probably see by the title, or the title is down there, is a review of the previous 2 episodes of The Flash before tonight's episode. Now the 2 episodes being Who is Harrison Wells and The Trap. And in a way, it's kind of fitting that I'm talking about both these episodes at once because they do sort of go together in terms of the overall story of Harrison Wells and the Reverse Flash, and what's going on with that particular storyline. Now the first one was good, very good. The second one was great. Now the first one, it basically details Detective West and Cisco going to Starling City to find the body of the real Harrison Wells. They enlist the help of Captain Lance. Paul Blackthorne guest stars, and at the same time, Laurel confronts Cisco about all of the secrets, and she asks, this is my sister's sonic thing. Could you modify it for me, please? And he's like, sure. So there's that. And at the same time, back in Central City, Barry and crew are dealing with how they're going to deal with Dr. Wells when the time finally comes. They're looking for evidence on how can we prove that he is the Reverse Flash, and how can we actually trap him. And in the midst of this, they have to play nice with him because there's a new metahuman on the loose who can transform into anyone. It's basically Mystique, except this metahuman has to actually come in physical contact with someone. So I actually thought, while the metahuman himself wasn't all that memorable, I did think his abilities went with the general theme of the episode, of secrecy and people not necessarily being who others think they are, which again revolves around the character of Harrison Wells, who, as I've said before, is the most interesting character. And at the same time, I thought the guest spots in Starling City were pretty relevant. Normally I'm thinking, okay, well, if they're going to have these constant crossovers, then you have to give me a little context. For the most part, I think they have. Before in Arrow season 2, when Barry Allen showed up, and then Caitlin Snow and Cisco showed up later on, I thought, okay, well, this is just clearly set up. Whereas the sort of smaller, I don't want to say full on crossover, but guest stars or guest spots that they've had on The Flash over the course of the season, I think really they've done a good job of giving that context. So yeah, the first episode I generally enjoyed. However, the second episode is where things really picked up. They actually managed to convince Caitlin, which I actually thought Caitlin gave a pretty good reason for not necessarily wanting to believe them about Dr. Wells. So basically what they do is they actually use this device to make Cisco look more like Vibe from the comics. They use this device to allow Cisco to go into his dreams, because he's been having these dreams of the alternate timeline where he gets killed by Dr. Wells. He goes into his dreams and basically gives them a vivid picture of what happens, so that they can recreate it, so that they can catch Wells in the act, and hopefully catch him, period, expose him as the Reverse Flash, and capture him, and get him to confess to killing Barry's mother, blah 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 blah. However, this episode, the reason I liked it so much mainly was because we really got to see the previously established status quo really come crashing down, because Dr. Wells is revealed to be not only the man behind the curtain, but he's known what they were going to do every step of the way. He's had them under constant surveillance. I mean, it's really Big Brother type stuff, because they go into his secret room and they find out, oh my God, he's been watching us this whole time, and he's from the future, blah blah blah. And when they actually try to set the trap for him, he uses the metahuman from the previous episode, the one who can change based on skin contact. he uses this metahuman as sort of his diversion, so that he himself can get away. So even now, when they think they've got him, he's still one step ahead of them. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed these two episodes of The Flash. They had some really great twists, really compelling progress made with the storyline involving Dr. Wells. Again, I'm so impressed with how they've managed to weave this guy into such an interesting character. And again, he may have been an interesting character in the comics. I'm not well versed in the Flash, or at least well versed enough in the Flash to know definitively. But the fact that he is that they have made this move against him, and he has responded just so effortlessly, just trumped them every step of the way, even now, really says a lot for this guy's cunning. However, one thing that I felt did not work about the second episode is there's this little moment with Iris. For the most part, the flashbacks were utilized pretty well because it flashes back to Barry in a coma, and Dr. Wells basically monologues to him and basically says he's sort of talking to himself, collecting his thoughts. He says, "Fate's a tricky thing. I mean, I came back in time to kill you, and now in order to get back home, I have to help you, my greatest enemy. I have to help you become my greatest enemy." So already we have a general idea of the relationship between him and the Flash. And again, it is a pretty ironic predicament for him because for obvious reasons he's having to help his greatest enemy actually become his greatest enemy so that he can get back home. So, but the one thing I felt did not work is that there's this moment in the flashbacks when flashing back to Barry in a coma, when Iris is visiting him, and she I think she goes in for a hug or something like that, and she experiences what looks like static electricity, or she probably thought it was static electricity at the time, but she experiences a jolt. And later on in the episode, when Eddie gets kidnapped by Dr. Wells, and the Flash comes to Iris and basically says, "I will get him back, I promise," he's basically holding her hands, trying to reassure her, and as he lets go, there's a jolt of static electricity, and she immediately knows, like at the drop of a hat, that, oh my god, Barry's the Flash. And that just felt really dumb. And keep in mind, on the Flash, something involving a guy running around in a red suit fighting a guy running around in a yellow suit and talking gorillas, all the crazy stuff we've seen. And this is where I draw the line on suspension of disbelief and stupidity, because that's a pretty big assumption to make. And I can understand maybe feeling that jolt and maybe getting the idea that Barry might be the Flash. But because that's essentially what Laurel did in season 2 of Arrow. She actually, yeah, she was told by Slade Wilson that Oliver is the Arrow, but of course she had to look into it further for herself before she could believe it. Now Iris just instantly knows. So maybe if she got the idea in her head and then maybe did some further investigation, because she's already come so far in terms of, piecing things together and, figuring out the whole metahuman Star Lab explosion thing for herself. I just think it was too big a leap to really chalk up to just being definitive knowledge. So, yeah, that's about all I got for these 2 episodes of The Flash. Of course, I'm looking forward to the next one involving Gorilla Grodd. I'm very interested to see where they're going to go with him, especially, again, on a TV budget. I wonder if we're going to get the more beastly Grodd, which seems to be what they're implying in the commercials. This sort of Bigfoot caveman type Grodd, or if we're going to get the really articulated, intelligent Grodd from, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Or maybe if we'll start out with a beastly Grodd and slowly he'll get more intelligent as he interacts with more humans. I don't know where they're going to go, but I'm excited to find out.